Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode. As always, wherever in the world you're listening to us from, whatever platform you're listening to us on, thank you guys so much for all of the support, all of the messages, all the things that you've sent to me, all the things that you've sent to the show. Can't tell you how much I appreciate hearing from you guys, and I love hearing all of the suggestions, the ideas, the topics, the things that are going on in your coaching world, in your basketball world. It's really fun to connect with you guys and bounce ideas back and forth. What we're going to do today is kind of meld two ideas and kind of two topics together, which I think is pretty fun. We're going to talk about practices, but we're going to talk about it specifically from the lens of what are called value-based practices, which I think is really cool. The idea of how you design your practices around the values of your program and how you can keep those values of your program in mind as you're running your practices, because I think it's so important that we have visions as coaches and we have our values and we have our culture and we have the things that we want to do, but we want to make sure that those things are present in all of the different aspects of our program, and practices, of course, are a huge part of what we do in our program. So I'm really excited to jump into this and talk about how we can keep those values on the forefront of our mind as we're running our practices and making our practice plans. So let's jump into it today with my guest, who is assistant boys basketball coach at Stephen F. Austin at the high school, also coaching at the JV level as well. So he's a very busy man over there at the Stephen F. Austin High School. Very happy to be joined today by Coach Shane Bryant. Coach, again, really happy that we're able to have this chat and you're able to come on and talk to us. How are things going today?
Hey, Coach, thanks so much for having me on. Been diving into podcasts. You've had some great episodes, great conversations. It's an honor to be here, and just thanks so much for making the time.
Of course, of course. Coach, let's start with you and your basketball journey and your coaching journey. Talk us through where the game of basketball has taken you. Talk us through your coaching journey and what were the steps that ultimately led you to Stephen F. Austin High School.
Absolutely. I'm currently in Texas, but I grew up in Southern California around a lot of great basketball. My mother was a teacher for 35 years. So I grew up in her classroom, and, education was always kind of a possibility for me. Went to college to be a scientist, and I started out as a scientist after college, who was reffing high school basketball on the side. And as time went on, I kind of really fell back in love with basketball, and just, especially at the high school level, just the excitement that fills the gym. And I kind of wanted to make a change. So I had an opportunity to move out to the Houston area and begin my teaching and coaching career. Had the pleasure to land at one of the best high schools in the Houston area for my very first job, teaching and coaching. I've worked under two amazing head coaches at my two campuses. Been able to coach some awesome kids who have gone on to do great things in either the academic world or athletically. And I just feel so blessed and so happy to be able to do what I do every day.
No, that's awesome. I love that. You have the plan in life, the thing that you think you want to do or the direction you're going to go. And then, just one little interaction or one little turn or one little exposure to something else. And all of a sudden, boom, you've diverted off into a completely different path, which is really cool. No, that's really sweet. One of the things that we talked about in kind of our initial interaction, Coach, is you mentioned about the importance of kind of building up from the youth level up, and how it's really important, and I completely agree, how really important it is to start at that youth level and then kind of build that up as your foundation, that hopefully those players who hopefully will stick with you and are still with you will come into the high school level with that much familiarity and that much exposure to the way things are run at the high school level, because they started at the youth level. So I wanted to kind of talk to you about the art of building a youth program. What are, in your experience, the key components that are needed? What has to happen in order for a coach to really have a strong and successful program at that youth level?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is one of the unique aspects of a high school job. You look at the college level nowadays, and just the transfer portal has just changed everything. And,
Mm-hmm.
I think as a college coach nowadays, I think it's difficult to plan on having a kid for more than 2 years or even more than 1 year in some cases. Whereas at the high school level, like we should have that kid for at least 4 years by the time they reach our campus. And if you're making some visits to your feeder middle schools, you might actually be able to develop a relationship with that kid that can go on for 6 or 7 years, which I think is really special. Of course, there's those athletic advantages that come with that. But it's just nice to be able to build that relationship with that student and maybe that family early on. So I think that number one is just about starting those relationships early, making some appearances at the middle school or the junior high, um, popping into some of their practices, having a relationship with those middle school coaches, and kind of like getting a feel for what's coming up. Also, we do a middle school night. We pick one of our home games, and we make it a middle school night, and we invite our middle school coaches and our middle school players from our feeder middle schools to come experience a varsity home basketball game. We play at the 6A level here in Texas, which is for the biggest high schools in Texas, the highest level. And I mean, that's a really fun experience for those middle school kids to be able to come to a high school gym, see some really high level basketball, something that they aspire to do in 3 or 4 years when they're at our campus. And it's cool for them to be able to see that and be invited to that and be special guests at a night like that. Another thing we do is we run a youth camp in the summer, which is really for kids going into like first grade all the way up to high school. And again, just an opportunity for the community to kind of get to know the basketball coaches. We love to do that like the first week of summer, and parents love it because it's like cheap babysitting. They drop off their kids and the
Yeah.
kids are tired by the time they get home. So it's a good way to kind of, again, like build those relationships early, get the kids excited about basketball, and for them to start picturing playing at our school because they live in the area anyway. And then another thing we're big on is we build a program from the top down. So we, of course, want to win varsity games and really want to get our varsity kids ready for the next level, whatever that looks like for them. And then, of course, getting kids ready for the varsity level if they're not there yet. And so it just trickles down to, if eventually I want a varsity basketball player in our uniform to look like this, what are the skills that we need to focus on at the youth level, and then as a freshman, and then maybe as JV player. And so a big thing we do, especially by the time they reach our high school campus, is we don't change our offense or defense year to year. Like our freshmen run, granted, it's a more simple version of our offense, but we don't all of a sudden change what we emphasize or change our focus or change the type of shots we want to get. It's the same similar actions, footwork, those types of things. And so I think when you have that top-down vision, it allows you to kind of think through the foundational skills that you want to emphasize to your youth players at the middle school level, and then as they reach your campus.
Do you have a lot of conversations or collaborate or work together with the coaches at the youth level? What's the kind of the a relationship that you have? Because obviously you're trying to build them up so that they're ready to play at the high school level. So there's obviously information and things that you're giving them. But what kind of goes into that kind of partnership and the success that you can have to make sure that you and the youth coaches that these players have are kind of aligned and on the same wavelength?
Of course, I mean, in Texas, middle school basketball starts in seventh grade. So they get a seventh
Hmm.
grade year and they get an eighth grade year before they come to us. And that's great. That's great for them because they start to get that school basketball feel. Like, I'm representing my school. I play with other kids who go to my school. We play against other schools. And so that's kind of where the organized school basketball starts. And so we are in contact with those feeder middle school coaches. We have 2 feeder middle schools, and the coaches do a great job communicating with us, allowing us to come visit their campuses and work with those kids. So we have a good relationship with those campuses and those coaches, and we give them kind of some of the things that we like to see those kids work on while they're at middle school,
Hmm.
so they kind of have a better foundation by the time they get to us. So there's visiting on both sides. Like we go visit their campus. Like I said, we invite them to come visit us for a game. And yeah, so that's really and then outside of the school basketball, like with AAU is huge here in
Yeah.
Texas, and there's all sorts of levels of it, and so we always try to have a good relationship with those coaches as well. A lot of them don't coach at a school; they're primarily just club coaches or AAU coaches. But we'll be in contact with those coaches as well and kind of find out what skill work they're working on with the kids. So we kind of have an idea of where our kids have a comfort level, and things that they might be working on that we can incorporate in our program as well. My head coach especially does a great job of going out to those AAU games and visiting our players and seeing kind of what they're up to when they're playing outside of our system and playing with other teammates as well. So that's one thing. We're not allowed to like form our own AAU programs that have our own high school players,
Hmm.
and so that kind of gives them that chance to go play, different system, different style with different teammates, and it's good for us to kind of be in tune with what that looks like for that player too.
Yeah, and I think that's great for those players too, to get, a different voice or different perspective or a different system that they get in. I know that for some of the players that I've had who play for other coaches, it's refreshing for them to be able to be with, maybe different teammates, or just hear from somebody else, or maybe try out something, or be in a position that they normally wouldn't be in. I think that as long as that relationship is positive, it's great for them, because they get more skills, and they get different perspectives of the game and things that they can bring to me, and hopefully I'm doing the same for them. And I think if that partnership remains really positive and open and transparent, and you build that, really good relationship with your youth coaches or your club coaches, ultimately it's your player that's going to benefit, because they're going to grow and they're going to have a improved skill set.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So when we talk about, Coach, the concept of value-based practices, we got to start with the foundation, which is the value piece. So talk about what the values are, um, at the high school that you're at, and how did those values get established, and then in turn, how do those values kind of then get communicated and instilled to the players?
Yeah, great question. So I had the luxury of arriving on campus alongside our head coach, Coach Linden. Shortly after Coach Linden got the job, um, 2 summers ago, he called me and asked if I wanted to come with him to help build up this program that he was taking over. And it was a great opportunity as an aspiring head coach to work alongside a coach who also just got to campus, is inheriting this program, inheriting these student athletes, and figuring out, what do we need to establish? Like what is our culture going to be? What are our habits going to be? Um, One thing that we learned early on is that at our particular school, uh, you are intended in Texas 6A basketball, you're intended to have 5 teams, a varsity and then 4 sub-varsity teams. Our campus was losing 2 sub-varsity teams every season due
Mm,
to grades and behavior. Just kids that wouldn't stay in the program, kids that were academically ineligible. Those numbers were so high that we were losing 2 teams every season. And that's kids that no longer get to play at the correct level, whether they should be playing. You're losing student athletes. And so we knew that first and foremost, that was going to have to be a huge focus for us. So grades, behavior, and basically developing these student athletes to realize we care about every aspect of you as a student athlete, not just what you can do on the basketball court. Like we want you to represent our program well in the hallways, in the classroom, when you're at the grocery store, if you're at Chick-fil-A, wherever you might be, we want you to represent our program well. And so we really focus on a culture where we're promoting student athletes to be respectful and independent young men. Um, we put a lot of responsibility on the kids, where we communicate information to them first, and we put it on them to communicate with their parents, because we think that just builds them to have more responsibility. Um, and so we'll communicate with them the game time or the practice time, or we need this waiver turned in for this spring league. And we put it on the kids first. And then, of course, If we're not getting it back in time, then we have to follow up with the parent. But ideally, the focus is that we're developing these kids to become more independent and responsible. And since we took over the program, we have not lost a sub-varsity team since. So
That's great. Yeah.
we've been able to maintain all of our teams. We've had very few kids that slipped into academic ineligibility. We've had a huge increase on our kids who are part of the AB honor roll, and so it's been really awesome to see. Basketball wise, we're a team that has to play extremely hard and has to share the ball. We're not that, we're in the Houston area. There are some fantastic student athletes in our area. Some great kids, very athletic kids. And we simply are not a team that can just roll the ball out there and just try to out athlete another team.
Right.
And so we have to play extremely hard. We have to share the ball. We have to value the ball more than our opponent. So when we're on defense, we got to try to get that ball back. And when we're on offense, we got to take care of it and make sure we get a great shot. I mean, that's just as simple as we can put it. And we want to be a disruptive style of basketball. We want teams to fear us when they see us on their schedule or they watch us play. And we've had some coaches share with us that we were a really difficult team to prepare for, which is always what you want to hear. And so that was a great thing. And we're big on player development, where we want every player on the floor to be a threat to score. That's something we tell the kids from day one, is that we're not looking for ball movers. We're not looking for guys to just kind of be out there. Like, we want everyone to be a threat, which means that we focus on developing every single kid. We focus on developing their skills, making them the best player they can possibly be, because that helps us as a program. The more kids we have who are capable of scoring in multiple ways, that gives us more freedom and more flexibility as well. So that's kind of an overview of our values. That we are huge on grade checks, behavior, like rewarding good behavior, addressing if there's any issues in the classroom, giving responsibility to the kids, and then basketball wise, just effort and focus every day is a huge emphasis for us.
So I'm curious to kind of follow up with something that you said about how, and I completely agree with this, and this is part of my own coaching philosophy as well, as you mentioned about how you want every player to uh, be potential playmakers, right? They all got to be threats on the offensive end of the ball, and I think you said that not just ball movers, but people who are gonna, be able to make strong decisions and have to be respected on the offensive end. How big of a shift was implementing that to your guys' base as compared to what they were doing before? Was this something that needed a lot of time for players to kind of adjust to that mentality? Did they kind of pick up on that and were bought in and gung ho on it from the very beginning? Talk us through what that sort of mental shift of having every player thinking of themselves as a playmaker was like.
Yeah, no, great question. And it's funny. Like, I was watching a video kind of talking about this happening at the youth level, especially where at the youth level, sometimes if you want to win, you simply get the ball to your best player and everyone else gets out of the way. And it's understandable when there's a player who's just more developed or just more talented or just bigger than the kids around him. It's like, if you're coaching that team, you feel like the best thing for that team is, let me get the ball to my best player and I'll tell my other kids how to space out and get out of the way. And it works at that level, but then the problem is those other kids are not developing, and even the best player is not developing the way he should, because he might learn to now take some selfish shots. He might force it when he shouldn't. And so we kind of had to communicate. That was a change for us, is our youth at the youth level. Again, like, not their fault, but for them to have any sort of success at the youth level, it looked like giving the ball to the best player and everyone else just kind of get out of the way. And so we had to really take those kids who were accustomed to not touching the ball very much. We had to really teach them how to, hey, we're going to teach you how to be a basketball player. Like, we're going to teach you how to be a threat. Like, every time you catch the ball, you're looking to shoot. And I think for those kids, it was kind of a welcome change, because it was different than what they were experiencing at their younger age. For some of our more talented kids who maybe were those ball dominant players, they bought in as well, because they wanted more threats on the floor with them. They wanted to get higher quality shots for themselves. They wanted to be more efficient on offense. where they trusted our spacing and trusted that if everyone's a threat, I might get more one-on-ones or I might get
Mm.
more advantage shots rather than having to be a hero, and score over two. And so that was good to see. We like one thing about our kids is they are very unselfish kids. We have some great families who support. They're very unselfish. They want to play hard. They want to be successful. They buy in. Like it's a dream as a coach for these players that I get to coach because
That's awesome.
they will just go out there and play so hard and trust what we're doing. And so it really pushes you as a coach to give your absolute best because these kids are going to give you their best. And so it pushes us every day to be on top of what we're doing and putting these kids in the best position we can. But no, it's been great because I take pride in how I can develop players and get the most out of them. Like I'm always proud of them. I've been fortunate to send some kids to the college level, had some kids get recognized as all district players, and it's just great that we can do that in a way that develops the player and gets the most out of him as an individual. But that's building our team system, and it's putting our team in the best position to win and the best position to get great shots on the offensive end. And so there was good buy-in early because, like I said, these kids are just loyal, they're trusting, they work hard. But it was definitely a shift for both sides, the talented kids and the ones who are kind of coming from a space out standpoint. But it's been a lot of fun because when we do our skill development, everyone's involved. I don't pull the starters and say you guys are going to get more reps than everybody else. Like everyone gets reps. So it makes our practices fun with a lot of energy.
So let's shift into that then. And now with that kind of in mind and the idea that right every player is kind of accountable to be a playmaker and have a certain offensive skill set. Let's go into kind of the structure of a practice. So obviously the practices are going to look a little bit different, whether it's, the beginning of the program versus, the beginning of the season, middle of the season, end of the season. So this is kind of in a very general sense, or if you want to kind of talk about practices at different stages, that's perfectly fine as well. But um, in a general sense, what is the structure of a practice? And then what are those points of emphasis and the things that you're working on in a practice that go and reflect the values that you just talked about?
Yeah, great question. So Coach Linden is our head coach and um, amazing guy to work for. When he called me, the first thing he told me was he wants assistants who aspire to be head coaches one day. That's something that he believes in. That's something he's big on, and he's allowed me to be very hands on with our varsity, and he's actually entrusted me to design every practice plan for our varsity group. That includes our athletic periods that we have during the school year, our season practices, our summer workouts. He's really entrusted me and equipped me to handle that piece, which has been amazing for my development as a coach because it forces you to think through everything. And that's why I love this topic because in my opinion, if somebody walks into your gym and observes a practice, even if it's just a few drills, they should be able to walk away and write down values that are important to your program. They should be able to write down, man, that program cares about this. And so that was really important to me when Coach Linden gave me that responsibility, is that I wanted guests to be able to walk into our gym and say, man, these guys play hard. Man, these guys talk on the defensive end. Wow, these kids know what a great shot looks like. Like those were just some of the values that I wanted to shine through in our practices. And so um, in pretty much every one of our practices, you're going to see individual skill work. I know some teams don't have post players. Everyone just kind of looks the same. We are fortunate to have some great post players where their skill set is best around the rim. And so we usually put them over on one goal. And then we have all the guards. I handle the guards with me. So we'll work on some individual skill work that's within our offense. We'll usually do a team offensive drill, some team transition, a defensive breakdown drill, and then lots and lots of competing. And so kind of like a kind of a coaching mentor for me is Doug Novak, who he had a quote that said, "Skill development is our offense." Where it's just a simple quote, but it makes perfect sense, especially for me at the high school level, where like we could have the best offense in the world, but if our players aren't skilled as basketball players, what good is it? And so
Right.
it's all about developing the player, developing that player to be the absolute best basketball player that he can be, giving him more skills, more confidence on the basketball court. And then whatever actions you run, hopefully that kid's skill set is equipped to be successful in those actions. Of course, spacing is so important, as we all know today. Offensive spacing is really what gives way to your offense. And so something that I just started to do is that we kind of had our offensive system, we knew our spacing, we knew some of our common actions, and I took our offensive system, I took our offensive actions, and I said, we're going to chunk this, and that's going to be our offensive skill work. Like, these are the skills, these are the actions, these are the positions that my kids find themselves in. I'm gonna chunk that. We're going to make it a 2-man drill or a 3-man drill, and that's going to be our skill work, or that's going to be our drill. I can't tell you how many drills I've just drawn up on a napkin and
Yeah.
just slapped a name on it, like, this is bulldog shooting, you know. And it's like, and I just came up with it, you know. And all I did was take offensive movement and offensive spacing and our offensive principles, and all I did was write it down and say, okay, well, when this kid drives, what's our movement look like, and what shot opportunities do we get out of this? To me, there was just no point in copying a drill from someone else. It could be a great coach, but if we don't run, if we don't run Euro ball screen, then why would I take a Euro ball screen drill? Just to do a drill. Like, I would rather put my kids into game like situations where they are getting game like shots. And so we take a set that we run. Like, okay, my guard comes off this flare, my guard drives baseline if the shot's not there, and as he drives baseline, I have a big looping to the front of the rim, and I should have a guard in the opposite corner for a hammer 3. Like, if that's our offensive action, let's just do that over and over and over
Right.
again, and have the kids switch lines, and there's our drill, and we're getting reps. And another thing I'm big on is getting 2 shots per rep. So when we do a drill like that, I do drills like that with just my guards, and they love it because they get two shots every rep. And then when I do it with my bigs, and the kids have noticed this by now, but whenever we do a drill with the bigs always get a layup or a dunk. Always. Like, when we're doing a drill, because I need my guards to get accustomed to feeding the bigs. So when they drive, I always, always, one of the shots we're getting on that rep is going to be a dish to the big for a layup or dunk. Because I want to get our guards in the habit. They shoot enough threes, and I love catch and shoot threes, but I always want to get them in the habit of finding those bigs. And so getting 2 shots per rep, some reasons I'm big on that. Of course, more shots is always great, right? So 2 shots is better than 1, and that's always great. But another thing for me is it emphasizes the next actions and the available options that are there for our guards and for our players. Because to me, if I just do a 2-man drill and I say drive baseline, throw the hammer pass, and that's all we do, my guards might think, well, that's the only pass I have. Coach
Well,
keeps
right. The only
telling me to throw
option.
the
Yeah.
hammer pass. That's the only option we have. And now that kid is going to have a lack of confidence when he's playing in the game, because he's going to think his only option is score or throw the hammer pass. And so I just started saying, I'm like, let's always get 2 shots per rep so that everyone's moving and no one's standing around, because you're that other option. Like, I need you ready for that throwback pass because you're the next option. Like, you're an option on this play. Like, be ready to score, be ready to catch and shoot. It also gets me thinking as a coach because I always do 2 shots per rep, and so it always gets me thinking as a coach, like, okay, what's next? Like, my guard is driving to score, help defense comes over. What are his protection plans? That's another Doug Novak term, is what are my
Okay. Write
protection?
that down.
What are his protection plans? Because like, basketball is a super fast paced game, especially here in Texas at 6A level, boys basketball, very fast paced game. No kid walks on the court and says, I hope I turn it over today, or I hope I take a bad shot today. They
Right.
don't want to. They don't want to, but sometimes we get in their ear and we say, hey, drive to score, drive hard. But if you give them protection plans, if you show them, hey, here's where you can expect a teammate to be wide open, like I've found that they can now drive with more confidence. And again, we have unselfish kids. They will score it if they have the advantage, but they know how to stop and where their available options are because we drill it and we always have 2 shots per rep. So they just naturally know what options are available for them when they get into game-like situations.
No, I love that the concept of a protection plan, and I think that when you have an offense that has a lot of decision making and there's a lot of player opportunities to have some freedom and to attack and to make decisions, you're right. What you brought up is a really good point about what do they know they can get into right away if they penetrate and they get doubled or they get cut off or if the shot isn't there and they got to make a quick pass or got to swing it somewhere, like where are those alternatives to do? And I think to your point, the way that you really get a sense of what that is that you practice it and you rep it and you put them in those situations. And so as you're kind of giving this explanation, you, it seems like, are intentionally putting your players in these situations where this is what you're probably going to potentially see in a game. How do you kind of work on figuring out and being able to determine what those options are and making those correct reads in a practice?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been great for me. The first coach I worked for at my previous school, um, he had a simple rule for us sub varsity coaches. I was a freshman coach, and he had a simple rule, and it was have a practice plan every day. And it sounds so simple, but it's easy when you're a sub varsity coach to sometimes just get to the gym and say, we're just going to scrimmage today, or we're just going to review the plays, and when he challenged me with that and said, "Hey, have a practice plan every day,"
Hmm.
it just practice plan as a coach, it just really helps you find out what's important to your culture, what's important to your program. Like, especially as a freshman coach, you get like hour practices. It's like that hour is so valuable. It's like, what do you want to emphasize
Right.
to these kids? And so it really kind of forces you to sit back again, like get out a napkin or get out a piece of paper and say, okay, like what are we struggling with? How do I give my kids more confidence? And during our skill work and our team breakdown drills, we're doing them with no defense. But there is so much energy in our gym because the kids are so excited because they're getting game like shots off game actions. Like, we're not just doing this drill because it looks cool. Like, we're doing this drill because this is a game situation that you are going to find yourself in. And I want to build habits in your body and in your muscles. And the bigs love it because they're getting a dish. They get to practice catching with soft hands and they get to practice finishing, and our guards love it because they're getting practice with penetration, kicking, catch and shoot threes within the rhythm of our offensive actions. And that builds you confidence. So when your body will find you're going through the same exact motions in a game like situation, and your hands and feet are ready, and you catch and you knock that shot down because you've been used to it. You're not just your shot reps are not just stand still, catch, shoot. It's off motion, it's off a drive, it's off a relocate. And so that's why, and the kids love them because they there's energy in the gym because they start to get excited about hitting those shots in the game like situation as well.
Oh, there you go. I lost you for a second. All right, I got you back. All right.
Oh, sorry.
I wanted to touch on you talked about skill development, and I wanted to ask you quickly, Coach, about are you switching up the kind of work that you're doing in your skill development practices? Is there like a rotation of things that you work on? Is it situational dependent? What is the plan, I guess, so to speak, when you're doing like skill development work with your guys in a practice?
Yeah, it can definitely be kind of like if there's an action we want to focus that week. Sometimes if we know we're facing a team that has a lot of defensive pressure, or maybe they full court press, we'll sometimes work more on ball handling or passing out of a trap. So it can definitely be opponent specific. Sometimes it's just, like, hey, we're putting in this new action. We need our guards to work on catching the ball off a flare, shooting off a flare, and then or catch to shoot, drive when the shot's not there. And so definitely just trying to always looking to increase their toolbox, and give them confidence on kind of showing what's available to them. And then they'll naturally gravitate toward, what skills they feel most confident in. And so the more that we practice those things, the more that they'll develop that confidence. And so it can definitely be changed based on opponent, based on where we're at in the season, or something, maybe just something as a coaching staff we see, hey, our kids would really do well from this, so let's go ahead and work on that. So definitely can be influenced by if we're struggling with something in games, or if there's maybe a strength that we observe in our players, and we want to get them more opportunities and more confidence in that.
How does your practices get adjusted and modified throughout a season? Obviously, the practices you'll do at the beginning of the season may not look the same, and your points of emphasis might change a little bit in the middle or the end of the season. So, how can a coach make sure that they're staying true to what their core values are in a practice, regardless of when they're taking place during a season?
Yeah, absolutely. I coached football for one season out here in Texas, and
Oh,
it was a great experience to coach high school football in Texas, just to
that's
experience that.
that's something
Um,
else.
yeah, but the level of scouting and the level of, like in basketball, we typically play two opponents every week. In football, you have that one opponent at the end of the week, and so the amount of scouting and preparation that went into it. I mean, with your kids, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you are talking about what does our opponent do and how are we going to stop it. In basketball, it's a little different because we have an identity and we're not going to stray from our identity. We're not going to stray from our values. Like if we're a team that likes to get layups and likes to get catch and shoot threes. If a team has size, we're not going to just tell our kids, "Hey, no layups this game. It's going to be all threes." I mean, we have to stay true to our identity, but we might naturally in practice that week we might focus on actions that we think will have an advantage in based on what we've seen from our opponent and how they play defense. Um, and another thing, like with scouting, is when we do our defensive work and we're preparing for an opponent, we don't play defense against our own offense. We like to we like to do some scouting, figure out what type of offense our opponent is running, and we drill that in practice. So we go through their offensive actions. How are we going to defend this? Let's get some muscle memory about how do I defend this? How do I fight through this? What am I looking for? What am I talking to my teammates about? So it definitely becomes more opponent specific as we progress through the season. And so that's just where we as a staff have to get on scouting. And fortunately, we have good access to that.
Mhm.
But like you kind of said, you have to stay true to your identity and you have to stay true to your culture, but it's really what you emphasize. And so I'll put parameters on a drill where we'll reward something. So if I feel that we're going to have an advantage inside and I want to get the ball to our bigs, what I'll do is I'll say, hey, we're going to play basketball points in this competition drill. But if your big scores or if your big gets a primary assist, I'll add 2 points to your score. So
Okay, changing
that way,
traditions a bit.
right. So that way, if you dish it to your big and he gets a dunk, that's 4 points. Or if your big catches it in the post and there's a double team and he kicks it out to you for a catch and shoot three, if you let that fly, that's a 5 point shot if it goes in because your big just picked up an assist. So that's just a way to kind of emphasize certain things where we kind of want to make that an emphasis going into that week. Um, there's plenty of times where we have to emphasize our press break, playing against pressure. So we'll do like pressure drills, having our guards have to make clean passes out of a double team. We'll emphasize certain looks in transition. We'll look at how our opponent guards ball screens and kind of get our kids some reps with that, put our JV in a defense and say, hey, you're going to be in drop coverage. I know we don't do drop coverage, but we're going to put you in drop coverage so our guys get used to seeing it. And so really just it's a lot about being prepared for what you're going to see that week while staying true to offensive actions. And I think if you come into that week and you just change everything, your kids start to lose confidence in you as a program and in you as a coaching staff. They start to say, well, coach, does our stuff work or does it not work? If you change everything. But if you kind of just say, hey, out of the things that we do, I think these two actions are going to be the most successful. I think the kids can buy into that and they can say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like we'll look for that this week. And so that's sometimes what we'll do is we'll play 5-on-5 and every possession starts out of a certain set just because we think that set's going to be really successful that week. And so we'll say, hey, we're going to play 5-on-5 possessions, but every possession is going to start with this set. And then something I always say is we have to stay positive. We have to be energy givers, not energy takers. Throughout a basketball season. I love how much time I get to spend with the kids at the school in Texas. They allow us to be with them a good amount of the year. But it's long. I mean, it's definitely long. It's a long season. And so you have to stay positive. You have to show that you're excited to be there. You have to enter the gym with energy and be ready to go. And again, it gets back to that. If you're organized, you have a plan and you're excited, I think the kids just follow that because they see the importance and they see how excited you are.
That last point that you mentioned is super important because I think that as a coach, there's so much that we want to get done. There's so much that we want to improve on. There's so much that we don't want to be satisfied with, that it's so easy to kind of get fixated on all the things that we still need to do, or fixated on the things that maybe weren't executed as well as we wanted, or we didn't quite get down the way we did. And we're can get locked into this idea of like constantly improving and things aren't good enough. Don't be satisfied. But as you mentioned, right, if we only do that, I think that could be something that could be kind of draining to our players if they feel that, we can never celebrate anything or never like be really positive or hyped about something because we're always just focusing on improvement or focusing on what didn't happen. So that like
Right.
mental reframing and that ability to kind of, focus on while there is always stuff to improve on, there's still plenty that we're doing well, probably lends to your guys coming in the gym, hopefully with a little bit more of a spring to their step and a little bit more excitement.
Right. Absolutely. Yes.
I wanted to ask about how your players themselves kind of hold each other accountable, because obviously those of you listening know, I'm sure many of you know this about the idea of like a team that has players that hold each other accountable versus just a coach that holds each other accountable, and how transformative it is when your players are the ones holding each other accountable. So how let's start with that aspect first. How are the players themselves being asked or being told to kind of hold one another accountable to the core values of your program?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is another one of those areas where we're just so blessed with some hardworking, like really hardworking,
Hmm.
coachable kids at my campus. Of course, that helps. When Coach Linda and I arrived, like I said, there were definitely some behavior issues. There were definitely some academic challenges. Um, my campus is a very, very strong academic school, and we love that. But it definitely, the teachers hold the kids accountable, and so we knew coming in, okay, we had some challenges. How do we get buy-in? How do we get kids to see the big picture? And fortunately, we found some leaders who did a great job. They were mature and they kind of saw, what changes needed to be made. And one thing we started doing was accountability groups. We started putting some of those leaders in charge of some younger players, and the leaders are in charge of monitoring their younger players' behavior, grades. Like our kids have to wear school IDs anytime they're on campus, and we monitor that. And the leaders will tell us like, hey, Johnny wasn't wearing his ID in the hallway, and just little things to make sure that we're upholding a standard. And so uh, like I said, these kids, I mean, we know we can count on these kids to work hard. And so like, we always want to have them prepared. But we're big on, so in our sub varsity period is definitely more coach led. Coaches are setting standards. Coaches are kind of communicating the expectations. But if you watch our varsity and our JV work, coaches stay out of it a lot. I mean, we say what drill we're doing, and we'll monitor and all of that, but really it's the kids are setting the standard. The kids are really the ones setting the standard and demanding that everyone's working hard. One thing that we do after a competition drill is we call it reflect, water and reflect. And so
Mm-hmm.
we competed hard. We usually have 3 groups competing. And then the coaches, again, stay out of it. And we have the groups go together and get water. And during that time, they are to talk about what went well in that drill. What do we need to improve on? What's something that we need to fix. And so we have the kids talk that out. And we find that doing that in competitive environments in practice leads to them being able to talk about those things more respectfully. Because we do have some competitors. We have some kids who want to compete, they want to win, and they can get frustrated when they lose a drill, they lose a competition. And so it's good to give them that opportunity to talk about it and talk it out as a group. Because as we all know as coaches in games, there are going to be those moments. Somebody blows a defensive assignment and it's a big play and it's a layup or a
Yeah.
3. And the more that your kids are accustomed to working through that, instead of just jumping on the kid who made a mistake, we found that they're more prepared to handle those moments that have some adversity. And so the accountability groups, asking kids to step up as leaders, to uphold the standards. They have a group chat to remind the guys about practices, lifts, paperwork that's due. Um, like, again, especially as they progress into our varsity and JV period, we really expect them to start to hold themselves as responsible, accountable young men, who can communicate effectively.
Do you need to model what those conversations look like? Because I know I've had to before with my girls, I have to kind of model like, hey, this is how you have that conversation with a player when they're not doing something, or here's how you kind of broach this conversation with them if you're worried that they're going to take it the wrong way. Is that something that you kind of have to, kind of help them guide them through that? Because I know it's not always easy for guys to maybe hold their teammates accountable and have those tough conversations with them.
No, for sure. It's a balance. It's a balance because we like, if anything, we get on them more if they are not holding their teammates accountable.
Yeah.
Like if we're running lines and somebody is not touching a line, like we'll get on a leader if he didn't say anything about it. Like we're, if anything, we shade more toward that side because we don't want to let anybody slip through the cracks. We don't want to allow anybody to fall below our standard or, a collective group to lower our standard. Um, uh, we graduated 8 seniors from on this past season. And so we have 3 varsity players who are returning. And so it was an easy pick for who our 3 leaders were going to be for these accountability groups. And one thing that I told those leaders was, hey, something you have to realize is a month ago, you were playing extremely competitive varsity basketball games. You were competing at a high level against some of the best teams in Houston. I said, you have to remember, we are in the off season now. We don't play a game like that for 10 months, And I said, so I'm like, it's not like these kids who are now going to be on your team, they haven't been through that with you. They don't know
Hmm.
what that's like yet. And so I said, if anything, they're going to need a little bit of encouragement. So I said, by all means, if they're not working hard, you let them know and you uphold that standard. But I told them, I said, if they're taking good shots that are within our offense and it just happens to not go in, I said, what that kid needs is for you to go over there and say, hey, man, that's a great shot. That's what we want. Because I said the first time that kid misses a catch and shoot 3 up here with you, he's going to put his head down. He's going to think, I let my team down. I said, if you go over there and say, hey, that's exactly the shot we want, I said, that's going to build their confidence. And our leaders did a great job with that. That was just like one thing I wanted to model to them. And they did a great job with that. And it's been fun to see. We did a spring league, and with, basically a bunch of JV guys and a couple of varsity guys sprinkled in there. We competed really, really well in our spring league, won our last 4 games against varsity competition. So it's been great to see already that kind of those habits that we've been building from the top down are starting to carry over as those kids reach varsity competition.
I love that point that you mentioned, because I think we might just expect that our players maybe know, especially our younger ones or our newer ones, like, oh yeah, you missed that shot, but that it was a good shot, like your confidence is good, that's what we wanted. But for a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old, that like they might think that because they missed it, like it's the end of the world, and they might think that like
Right.
they let everybody down by not making that shot, and they might not shoot it the next time they do, and they might not be the offensive threat that you said that all your players need to be on it. And just that simple conversation that you mentioned, where it's like, hey, this is exactly what we wanted, that can just make a huge difference. And then next time they'll shoot that shot again. And even if it doesn't go in, the other team knows that they're a threat to look to shoot the ball. And maybe that opens up something for somebody else. And just the power of that, like one small little comment that you can make to somebody might open up your whole entire offense.
Definitely. Definitely.
How do coaches also hold each other accountable to those same values? Because I'm sure we've all heard stories of teams or players that are held to one standard, but then coaches aren't holding themselves to that same standard, or coaches aren't holding each other accountable the way that we expect players to do. And we know how important it is for coaches to also hold each other accountable. So what kind of goes into that, to making sure that everyone on the coaching staff is adhering to the same values that you want the players to be following?
Yeah, great question. I think one thing is Coach Linden does a great job of equipping his staff, where, like I said, he builds it where he wants all of us on staff to aspire to be head coaches one day. And I think just that, just when you're an assistant who wants to be a head coach one day, I think that just naturally motivates you to always be involved as you can be, to work hard, look for opportunities, not just be a spectator in the gym. Um, Another piece is, I mean, of course, internally you got to love it. I mean, you have to love what you do. You have to be grateful for every day. Something that I share a lot with the kids is, we play about 35 games that count every season. And I always say, if we can only be happy on game days, or even worse, if we can only be happy on games that we win, I'm like, we will be a miserable group if we're only happy 20 times a year. And so it's like you have to find the joy in just the privilege we have to, whether you're an athlete or a coach. I get to go to a gym as part of my job today. I get to compete. I get to represent my community. I get to represent my school. It's just such a cool thing, that I think we can't lose sight of that, because I think that helps keep the energy up and keeps everybody positive, keeps everybody motivated. Um, and I think that we just have such hardworking, good kids who deserve to be put in a position to be successful. I think that's a big motivator for me, is just that I see these kids and I see, everything that they're juggling. Some of our kids have part-time jobs. Some of our kids are in band as well as basketball. Some of our kids are amazing students. And it's just, as a coach, it's like, okay, I need to do my part to give this kid, first of all, develop him to be the best individual basketball player he can be, but also put these kids on a team that's competitive and can go out and be successful. And so again, that just gets back to have a practice plan every day. I know our schedule. Let me go scout so I can get ready for our opponents coming up. And so just bringing energy and being an ear for those kids, but also having those um, high standards for coaches and for each other. As a coaching staff this year, we went to a coaching clinic. Texas does an awesome coaching clinic every year. They get a lot of fantastic college coaches from, like, they had Sean Miller from UT this year, but they also have some mid-major or even D2 or NAIA coaches who just share great information at these clinics. And I think just humbling yourself as a coach and recognizing, hey, I have things I can study too. I have things I
Hmm.
can look into as well, is just a way to kind of stay on top of things and not get too comfortable.
As a way to kind of wrap up this topic and kind of put a bow on it for the moment, I'm curious for you, Coach, how do you kind of know at the end of a practice whether or not this was a good practice and we really hit the things that we wanted, or maybe this wasn't exactly the best practice, or this practice missed the mark? How do you kind of go through, or you and the coaching staff kind of go through that like self-reflection process of no, at the end of a practice, knowing that, okay, this is exactly what it is that we wanted, or maybe this practice maybe missed the mark and wasn't quite everything that we needed it to be?
Great question. It's so funny. I mean, in my years of coaching, there's been times I leave a practice where I'm like, man, that was awesome. Kids were all about it. Energy was great. Like execution was on point. We play the next night and it's like it looks like we didn't practice, and then
Yeah.
there are times where I'm leaving a Thursday practice and we looked awful, just lethargic, like execution was not there, focus was not there, and I'm saying to other coaches we're in trouble tomorrow night, and then we come out and just everything's clicking, and so it is funny because I of course, like, I view practice planning as so important, and I pride myself on taking valuable time, to build a practice. I think it is a good thing to do is look back on those drills we need to emphasize tomorrow. I do think that's important, and I do think it's good to look back and just because a drill looks sloppy doesn't always mean that it was a bad drill.
Hmm.
Like we've been a big focus for us this summer has been defensive rebounding and then turning that into our offensive transition. And like you can put some drills in that make it look nice and clean and make you look like a really good rebounding team, and you can do some transition drills that make you look like the Showtime Lakers, but you have to do things that are going to translate to the game level. And sometimes that means a sloppy drill. Sometimes that means a drill where your guys are giving up offensive rebounds. Um, and of course, that's not the result you want as a coach, but that means that they're getting tested. And if you continue to test them, then they'll actually develop that skill that you're looking to develop. And so I think it is good to look back on a practice and kind of figure out, hey, did I like that? Do we need to continue doing that? I was telling my coach today after I said, we're doing that drill every day right now. Like, I'm like, right now we need that drill every day because it's just, we're still trying to develop that skill. And then there's
Right.
other ones that are just kind of in the rotation. Again, if it's an emphasis for that week, we might bring it up. But kind of what I wanted to say was, while I do analyze each individual practice, because I've seen us play great after a bad practice and play bad after a good practice, I think that it really is. It's just your overall body of work. Like overall, do your kids understand what you emphasize? Do your kids understand your values? Do your kids understand what a great shot looks like? And as long as they kind of have that understanding, they have that confidence in how we want to play. I think that will shine through more often than not, even if the most recent practice maybe wasn't the best.
Definitely love what you mentioned though about how a chaotic practice and one that looks a little sloppy or a little uh, chaotic and disorganized in some ways isn't necessarily a bad thing, because I think you mentioned this, and I know many people have talked about it, right? The game can get a little crazy, a little chaotic, a little disorganized. Things are never gonna be as clean as some of the drills that we can design. So, being a coach that puts players in situations that it's going to replicate the messiness of a game. It may not look aesthetically pleasing. It may not look the nicest during a practice, but it does obviously have that meaningful translation and will work itself well for your players to learn what to do in a game when they experience that same sort of chaos in a practice.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. And again, as a coach who loves practice planning, like I used to think, clean practice is the best practice. But in the sport we play, it's like you need your kids to see some of that chaos sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic, Coach. This hour flew by, which is phenomenal, and I love all the stuff that you shared. But I got a couple more questions here before I wrap this up with you. So we'll jump right into this first question that I ask every guest, which is thinking back on your coaching career. What is a specific moment from your coaching career that you think by sharing our listeners would be able to learn from?
Great question. So of course, I love practice planning. I love, as coaches, we want to get the most value out of our kids, like value every moment we're on the gym floor. And of course, this past fall, we start the school year and we have two gyms on campus. Neither gym was available. They both were getting resurfaced. Their floors were getting resurfaced. They were having all these delays. And so we're sitting here as varsity basketball coaches at a huge school getting ready for a big season, and we don't have a basketball court. And of course you can go to the weight room and you can do these things, but we had to get creative. And so it was year 2 with Coach Linden and I at the helm, and we said, you know what, let's check in on these kids, let's see how they're doing. And so we held individual conversations with each kid in our program. Because we didn't have a basketball court, we said, you know what, we actually had a moment to take a breath and step back, and we called these kids into the office and just asked them, how's it going? How do you feel about the school year? How do you feel about the basketball season? How are things going at home? And Coach, when I tell you that some of these conversations brought me to tears, just
Yeah.
hearing what some of these kids were juggling, and some, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share. I've been to. And just
Wow.
hearing that from the coaches, it's like, I love basketball and I love studying the game, but it just grounded me and made me remember why I made my career change and why I got into coaching. And just reminded me that I always need to be available for the kids. And so that's something that I want to take with me when I'm a head coach as well, is to always have an open door policy with my kids and make it clear that I want to hear what's going on. And if they need to share something with me, if they need help with something, like I always want to be there for that. And so that was just something that really just, again, as a coach who loves the X's and O's and loves skill development and loves everything we do on the court. Um, I think that the court was taken away from me just so I could really ground myself and have those conversations with those kids and hear from them. About the excitement they have, but also maybe things that were going on that we could help support them. And so it was a really, really special time to have those conversations.
Yeah, that's super powerful. And as you mentioned, right, the things that you can learn from your players about their lives and the stuff that they have going on. Some of it is just stuff that, man, you would never be able to guess, or you would never, be able to believe or think that they might be going through. And so many of them don't really have maybe a platform or a space where they feel comfortable sharing that stuff. And when they do, and they can, talk and share things and reveal things that are going on in their personal lives or things that they're thinking about, to me, it's some of the most transformative, like bonding that a team can have when they're having those, open and honest conversations about things that aren't even basketball related with each other. You talk about something that can bring a team together right away, and that just sounds like really, really powerful and a really, really amazing experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It really was.
Coach, to wrap up, I give every guest what I like to call the 60-second soapbox. We can go over 60 seconds. It's just a fun title I like to put on things, but I like to use it as a way for you to kind of get out a final thought, a closing message, a final idea, something that you want to leave the listeners with. You can take it any direction that you want, basketball wise or coaching wise, because it's your soapbox after all. So, Coach, I'm just going to go ahead and give you the floor here, and I'm just going to go ahead and let you take it from here.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, really, my message is simple. It's just make sure that the kids know that you love your job every day. I think that, again, as coaches, we're doing our job if we have high expectations. we're doing our job if we correct kids, whether it's their behavior or whether it's how they're playing basketball. But I think that it's so important that the kids know that you love your job every day, that you're excited to be there every day. Because again, I had a different career before I got into education and coaching. And I truly am so grateful for what I get to do every day. And I need to sometimes remind myself that I need to show that and shine that through every day. I remember a coach told me, like, when I was a freshman B coach, he said, be the most positive coach you can be. Like he said, with that group, freshman B, these kids, like it might be their last year playing basketball. He said, just be the most positive coach that you can be. Just use this year to be so positive. Applaud everything that they do well. And I had that group running the Princeton offense. I had ninth grade B players running the Princeton offense. And I think a lot of it was because I was being positive and I was rewarding them for good behaviors. And so I think as coaches, it's so easy to get caught up in what your team is doing wrong and what your players doing wrong. And I think it's just important to always make sure they know that you're happy to be there and that you're happy that they are there as well, because we wouldn't be able to do what we do without the kids. And so I think just when you're leaving a practice, make sure the kids know that they know that you love your job and that you're happy to be there and that you're happy they're there and we're all together. Because again, we can't just be excited for game days. We got to love those 6 a.m. workouts or those runs on the track or those bus rides. Because once you find ways to find joy in that, I think everything is just a lot of fun, and we're all grateful for what we get to do.
Yeah, that piggybacks off the point that you talked about earlier, right? You just can't be excited, after wins or in good moods after wins, because, right, I think you said how many days out of the year then are we going to be as excited as a coach, or is our team going to be excited if that's the only time that we're positive and upbeat? And there's
Right.
so much to celebrate, right, with the process of getting better and all the other things that aren't just on game day and aren't just on the scoreboard at the end of the game, that we keep our energy and our excitement for those things. Otherwise, right, as you mentioned, this might be a real stressful experience for everyone if we're only excited when we win, because those days are not nearly as frequent as all the other days that we have with our players, right?
Right.
Coach Bryant, again, thank you so much for coming on here and talking about not just practices, of course, but also values, and talking about culture and program building and establishing the culture that you have over there at Austin. It's really cool to hear you talk about the ways that your players have been empowered off the court in the classroom, and the way that they're empowered to be playmakers and to be decisions and all of those things. And it's really exciting to kind of hear that perspective and hear what's going on over there, and how much empowerment there is for your guys, and how much you're building them up, not only on the court but off the court as well. And I know that you got a lot of work to do as you kind of incorporate this new group that you got coming in, but I know you're gonna continue to do great things with you and the staff. So, Coach, again, thank you so much for coming on, talking about values, talking about practices, combining those two together. Best of luck here in this off season and preseason, and have a great year next year. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Coach. I appreciate the kind words. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you guys so much for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. We will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.